What's up, everybody? Wherever you may be listening, wherever you may be in life's journey, I'm so glad that you are here on this earth and that I get to be here with you. Welcome to an interview edition. That's right, a rare, but I always find delightful interview edition of the Rise to the Occasion podcast. This is one of the reminders that this podcast is really a selfish endeavor on my part. I am on a journey to trying to become a great husband and father, mentor, and son of God. And in order to do that, I need to be mentored. And so this podcast is me just giving you an experience of the people who are mentoring me, who are helping me grow, and who are walking alongside me in a particular way. So I talk to people in particular that challenge me or elevate me or engage me in a conversation that elevates a particular area that I'm trying to grow in. So this is your reminder that really this is just how I learn, is conversation with other people and experiencing other people and externally processing ideas. And I pray and I hope that it is also something that you are walking with and a way for you to grow as well. This time on the interview pod, we've got my new friend, Leanne Jarvis. Leanne and I met in the summer at random, struck up a conversation in generally the same space of ministry and work, and then reconnected a few weeks ago. And we're talking about what she is doing, which you'll hear more about today, and talking about different ways to collaborate. And my first idea was that we would talk about here on the pod. And Leanne is the founder of an organization called RoseFem, and it's an awesome name, really cool organization. Leanne is really focused in, and I'm so excited about this. I'm hardly containing myself. She is really focused in on being a beacon of hope and insight and support in the areas of understanding the intricacy of the human person at the cellular level, and marrying that to a really unique beauty and understanding of the human person. In particular, Leanne is really driving at the impact of hormones on women, and we'll hear more about this. And Leanne is a certified hormone coach, and she's got a certification in fertility awareness. She's got a background in nutritional science and molecular biology. She's got all this experience in accompanying women in various capacities, college campuses, pregnancy centers. I mean, she's got a lot. She's got a lot there. And she has science and knowledge and faith, and she's marrying them all together. And we are going to talk about women and hormones on this podcast. So Leanne, how are you doing today? Great to have you here.
Thank you, Jack, for that introduction. I'm doing very well. Excited to have this conversation and grateful to get to accompany you in this area of learning.
You're welcome. Did you did I miss anything or misspeak anything in sharing your bio, or you feel like I got it pretty good?
No, you captured the heart of it.
Okay, the heart of it. Yeah, no. If you go to RoseFem, there's like all kinds of information on what this looks like and what it means. And so please go check out what she's doing. So this is me being like, I want to become a better husband and a father, and almost like a, culturally speaking, a no touch topic is females and hormones. Like that combination, the intersection of hormones and females and husbands and fathers are like you know, I could throw in brothers there too, because growing up, I had like two sisters, and there was just like this sort of unspoken, be more sensitive around your sister right now. Like your sister is having some things going on, and you don't need to talk about it. Like just you have to
Just
be, you have
know
to
to
just
be
be,
more sensitive.
yeah, just,
Yeah.
you know, whatever that means to a 13-year-old boy, right? Like be sensitive.
Why is my
Um,
sister acting crazy right now?
yeah, yeah.
I don't
Why did
understand.
she just tell me to
She
stop
probably doesn't
breathing?
know.
Yeah, yeah, right. I remember it on that. I remember distinctly sitting at the kitchen table and my twin sister just looking at me and being like, "Can you stop breathing?" And me being like, "What?"
Wow, I didn't realize you have a twin, so
I do.
you
I do,
really
yes.
experienced a counterpart, a female counterpart, side by side, going through the
Yes.
same stage of life, but radically different experiences.
Yeah, I would be like, "Why are you suddenly like a lot meaner?" And she would be like, why do you suddenly smell really bad?" You know, it's just like all of a sudden this change. But I first I want to talk to you about like why this is sort of like a topic that women can have a conversation with other women on. But why is this, whenever I'm walking with people, men in particular, one of the things that they often struggle with is how to interact with their wife or their daughters around their menstrual cycle and around the fluctuation in their hormones. And they go to talk to me about it, and almost 0% chance that they have had any sort of conversation at all with their wife. So, like, why is this particular topic just such a minefield of dialogue, in your opinion?
Sure. Well, you said women can talk to each other about it, which is true, but I would actually argue because we live in such a contraceptive culture where women don't even have education and understanding of their own bodies, if a woman doesn't understand what's going on in her own body, her own hormonal fluctuations, and the way that those affect her mood, her fertility, her energy, etc., how can she talk to her husband, other men about it? And how can a man feel empowered to talk to her about those issues as well? And so, you know, I think really it starts at the heart, and my whole mission is to restore the heart of womanhood with first starting with education around hormones and the sacredness of womanhood, which includes our physiological capabilities to bear and nurture life are at the core of who we are as women. And so, first, there's a call for women to embrace that understanding of their own bodies. And from that comes an overflow and ability to articulate, to understand, to share with others. And so, perhaps, you know, historically, as we've through hormonal contraception, we've shut down women's natural fertility cycles. Without that understanding, without that natural cycle taking place for herself and kind of ownership of what's going on in her own body, of course there's a wall built up with the men in her life. How is she supposed to, you know, share this sacredness of who she is and what's going on in her body when she doesn't even understand it? So, you know, I think, yes, there is some taboo nature to this conversation, but really I would say it starts with women not being able to, you know, embrace and own what's going on with themselves first. And so from their own understanding will flow conversation with men and others in their lives.
So there's it. So what you're saying, I think you said two really important things I want to touch on. The first is, you know, I wanted to be like, hey, let's meta level it, and you're like, let's meta the level, you know, and I love that. So why do you think there's this mystery for women
Mm-hmm.
around their own experience of their own body and their own hormones and their own cycles? Like why is there such a cloud of mystery or a negative emotion too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
shame, and there's a desire to sort of like keep things hidden. Like Where does that come from? Why is there such a cloud of mystery around this?
Sure. Simply put, I think it's a lack of education. There's been a lack of education for women regarding their reproductive capacities at every stage of life. And so, starting at a young age, I think our reproductive education for women and empowering young girls, even adolescent girls prior to puberty, to understand, to become body literate, as we say, and understanding, their hormones, their fertility, as they step into that stage of life. And so where there's been lack of education, and to again go to a meta level where that's tied to just a women's healthcare system that hasn't honored these physiological processes of women, when our women's healthcare system has largely been tied to hormonal contraception for contraceptive as well as for gynecological medical purposes. There isn't we're missing that link between educating women on what's going on with their body, and then when they seek medical care, if even in our medical system isn't really empowering women with that information. When so often women are just given band-aid solutions, a pill, or told to just take this medication to solve this problem, rather than really getting to the root of what's going on. And so as a hormone coach, I'm very passionate about getting to the root of hormonal imbalances, to empower women to listen, because our body speaks a language, and we can listen to that language. But if nobody's ever told you to listen, and you don't have the context for what those symptoms could mean, what they're pointing to, how will she know? And so it's really important to have that education about what's going on at every stage, every reproductive stage, and then to be able to listen to those symptoms. I often tell clients our hormones are like a symphony. They can together there should be that melodious harmony between your hormones, but when one is off, you can tell, and that you can hear the asynchronous sound, and so we can know through those symptoms that something may be off, and rather than just suppressing that or pushing through, that's something worth listening to. So education, and then an ability to listen, to slow down and actually honor our bodies and our body's needs. And that's another problem in our fast-paced society. There's this sense of just push through, do hard things, which I know your show is themed on. We can do hard things, yes, but we also that shouldn't be in conflict with who we are, and what our body is trying to tell us.
Yeah, well, just on that last point, it's like you were made to do hard things is not you were made to white knuckle your way through life. Like often the hard thing that's required of you is to ask for help. It's to go deeper in your own knowledge of something. It's to be vulnerable. Those are often really hard things. I think one of the things that I'm just off to the side here, trying to let everybody listen to what you're saying, because I think it's really important, but I wanted to like pom-poms to sort of cheer on. There's a philosophical view of the human body and emergence of distress that we have in our modern culture, which is when there is pain, emotional pain or physical pain, that we jump toward, we treat it like as an intruder, as opposed to treating it like a prophet. And we treat it like, I need this problem to go away. I need it to be pushed out, kicked out, thrown away. Like one of the things that we talk a lot about in the psychological space is like, in your internal family systems, there are no bad parts. We don't want to kick any of your parts out of the family, or we don't want to necessarily forever mute parts of yourself. Um, and I've seen that in the physical world as well. It's like, oh, I have this biological response that's happening within me, this pain point, and my solution is I need to get rid of it, as opposed to I need to listen to the message it's trying to tell me about my life, about my emotional health, my spiritual health, my physical health, and we end up missing a relationship with one of the great teachers of our lives, which is our bodies. Um, how have you experienced that? Like, how, when you hear me say all of that from like a psychological perspective, does that resonate with you and what you see on a hormonal level?
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
absolutely. We all want to. There is certainly that temptation to push past pain, to either ignore or try to eliminate it as quickly as possible, rather than, I love you use the word profit, to see it as, one declaring something important for us to listen to, that prophetic voice or message for us to seek to understand what's going on and to seek to understand ourselves. And so again, my whole approach in walking with women is to view women as an integrated whole, to view our health as wholeness rather than as some metric to achieve some standard of health, because we are whole body soul composites, and we must take that into account even when we're looking at these physical symptoms. And so it's really important to me with female clients to ask deeper questions, to seek to understand, what are the stressors that could be contributing to your hormonal symptoms? How are you viewing your body? So often our physical symptoms are tied to deeper knots in our womanhood, in the way that we view ourselves, our dignity, and the way that, and that affects the way that we enter relationships, the way we carry ourselves in the world, and ultimately our contribution. And so we can't separate, our physical symptoms from the spiritual and emotional life. It's so important to integrate all of those. But again, unfortunately, if you're seeking to just alleviate physical symptoms, that's not taking into account the whole picture. And we have our medical system is wonderful for treating, symptoms of acute conditions, but we need to look at the whole picture. And many doctors don't have time. The system isn't set up, to ask some of these deeper questions, or to really take into account the emotional and spiritual life. And so that's part of the gift for us as coaches. We can provide that accompaniment and support for those we walk with.
Yeah, I want to drive to the practical here in a second, but I also want to make a really important point here for those who are listening who have younger children. What we're talking about here, it sounds very philosophical, and it sounds really a combination of philosophy and anthropology, because it is. It's like, you are a human being, you're made in the image and likeness of God, and you are a sacred entity. And God created you as an integrated whole, body, mind, and spirit. And they're meant to work together. I use this example all the time. Like, when I was 4 years old, my mom would always know when I was lying because I would snap my fingers. And it's like, there's a physical manifestation of emotional distress that takes place. And and that happens all the time in our lives, because we're integrated beings. And so if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I'm like, how am I supposed to have this conversation with her when she's 10, 11, 12, 13, when she starts to get her when she gets her period, um, how are we supposed to talk her through the transition of where she's at to, the prepubescent and pubescent years, and then young adulthood? Like, what does that look like? You actually start that fundamentally at the young age of talking about the importance of your body and how you live through your body and how your body sends you different messages. Like, the content is different, but at a fundamental level, you teaching your child that when they have certain physical feelings, that means they have to pee. That's their body telling them that they need to get something out of their system, right? Or when you teach a child, like, oh, when your stomach gurgles like that, it's because you're hungry. Or if you're feeling low energy, one of the things that you could be in need of is food. Content is different, but at its core, this is the same conversation. Your body is important. Your body has a message. Your body is to be valued. And we can understand God and we can understand ourselves in some ways through our own bodies. And you can actually start affirming that and laying the groundwork for that at a very young age. It's the same way that, like, I can start talking about theology of the body or preparing my kids to have a conversation about sex when they're 5, and I don't be like, oh, no, you can't pull down your pants because those are, that part of your body is scary, right? It's like, no, it's because that part of your body is so good and so sacred. There are only certain types of people who are allowed to be present with you when, your body is exposed in a particular way. There's only certain types of people who are allowed to touch you in this way because of how sacred the body is. That's actually setting the foundation for sex in the future. And so when you're listening to this and you're talking about young kids, like, this is critically important in the conversation around for a young girl to be able to receive what's going on with her body. Is it begins at a young age and begins with the foundation of her coming into the conversation being like, my body isn't scary. My body isn't wrong. My body isn't evil. My body isn't something to be afraid of, but my body is good. I feel like you want to jump in on that, so I'll give you space on that, but that's fundamental.
Beautifully said. And, I just want to add that the girl your young daughter will receive messaging about her body from the world. She will encounter messaging about her body, and so it's so important for that messaging to start with her parents. If there's not that foundation laid from her parents of understanding the sacredness of her body and starting in an age appropriate way to understand its capacities, then the world will step in, with false messaging. And so, we can't avoid these conversations and this language around the beauty and the sacredness of the body because, unfortunately, there very likely will be other messaging.
Yeah. Okay. So let's drive it to some practical stuff as we talk about this. I'm a husband. My wife has a monthly experience, a hormonal fluctuation. I can tell when it's coming and when it's over. I can tell when I am more desirable to her. I can tell when I am close to repulsive. Never truly repulsive, but close to, like, I don't want to be physically touched without her actually saying any of those things. If I want to have a conversation with my wife about this unspoken reality of our marriage, and I wanted to be like, honey, I feel like you should get more educated on your body, right? That's not going to fly. So what do you think my role is as a husband in relationship to my wife in accompanying her through the course of a monthly cycle and all the different things that she's going to experience? Um, like, what is my role in accompanying her? And what are ways that I can uh, be sensitive and loving at the same time? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'm sure that's a great question. I think the conversation starts with, um, of course, affirming the love and the goodness at every stage of her cycle, every stage of the month. And then, communicating that desire to specifically honor her needs as they change throughout the cycle, throughout those hormonal fluctuations. And so being able to ask good questions, about where she may be in her cycle, how that's making her feel, if she notices any changes, or simply, speaking. I think it can be hard in the heat of the moment, when maybe the emotions are raging, to say, I noticed something going on. That may not be the time to ask. So perhaps choosing one of those times where maybe she is more clearly able to articulate or to move outside of the emotions, to express how she sees, those fluctuations, and to encourage, as you said, potentially there's some opportunity to encourage her to learn more about what's going on. And so to ask questions there, to think like, hey, have you, I was reading this, I was having this conversation, did you know that your hormones are changing 30 to 50% per day around ovulation? Oh, I was finding out
What?
dips in progesterone leading up to the period can lead to uh, anxiety, these symptoms of PMS, that those a rapid drop in hormones, it contributes to those mood changes. And so if we view it as, not something taboo, so sensitive about you and your hormones and your problem, but this is a reality in the goodness of how we've been created, and a reality that affects you specifically every month. We can understand, as a whole, how women's hormones fluctuate, how we have a rise of estrogen the first half of our cycle leading to ovulation, and then progesterone takes over, and really come to objectively just understand the science behind our hormones. And that's for men to understand as well. And that's why I love teaching fertility awareness to couples, because men have these light bulbs that go off. It's like, oh, wow, the woman's body is fascinating. Everything, all of the intricacies leading to, ovulation and preparing the body for the potential of conception is incredible. So you can view it together, from that objective scientific understanding, and then move in specifically to the heart of the woman and how that affects, uniquely affects the woman in your life, and to see that as, again, part of her, the integrated whole of who she is. And so being able to understand the science of the hormones, and then to ask good questions to understand specifically, how that uniquely affects her, I would say is really important, because every woman's experience is different, and we're all unique. And so for one woman, that experience of whether the emotions or pain around the period, that's it varies, and that's also an area where a man in a woman's life can be encouraging with, if a woman is saying things like, well, this is just something that I have to deal with every month, being that voice of encouragement to have her consider, is this really normal? Can we together look into this a little bit more deeply? Could there be something else going on? Because I think we all have the tendency, whether men or women, to just kind of ignore our own symptoms or downplay them. And so being that voice of reason in a woman's life, to just encourage her to seek treatment, or to seek further support, is a way that you can honor her as well.
So when you do classes with people, and it's and it's a couple.
Mhm.
Tell me about what it's like when you experience just the best man. Like when you're watching the best man in that context. Like what are some common traits around him, his disposition, when you're like, man, that's a good standard to live by. Like what are some traits in how and how that man asks questions, how he receives information? What does that look like?
Sure. Of course, he's a good pupil. He's asking questions. He's engaged. I like to uh, quiz them along the way, and particularly turn questions back to the man to ask, okay, so what is this hormone? Well, tell me, what is luteinizing hormone doing? Well, it's the surge of luteinizing hormone is leading to ovulation. So just his engagement in the material, and we're speaking about fertility awareness material, oftentimes presented to couples going through engagement preparation, marriage preparation, and taking natural family planning classes. But I think more than just being an engaged student, you can see that the men who are really engaged, who are moving that information from the head to the heart, from this is just okay, this is a requirement that we have to, more than just a requirement that we have to go through for marriage preparation, and certainly more than just scientific knowledge. This is giving me key information. So, oftentimes it's more so the body language between the couple that I can see, that I can tell something is going on, where the man, his body language indicates, aha, oh yes, I, so that's what you're experiencing. And you see this language start to develop between their shared fertility, that this is not just something, for the women, and for the woman, for her charting, but for their combined fertility, and being open to life in their marriage. And so it's beautiful to start to see that, that the common language take place, for a man to begin to have those light bulbs go off about what's going on in his fiance or wife's body at certain times of the month, and then for him to really own it as well, to own that fertility. And I like to encourage men to even take charge of the charting for women. And so rather than having the woman chart her signs, her biomarkers of her fertility each day, I encourage for that to be a place of communication, for the woman to look for those biomarkers, and then to communicate those to the man, and to actually have him be the one charting them, even just for a time, because it opens that language of communication around their fertility, and around his engagement and involvement.
Well, thank goodness, because I was the one pulling out the signs. I'd be like, I don't know, Leanne. Like I'm a pretty committed husband, but I'm, that would be looking at the signs seems to be like that would be tough.
Yeah.
I'll definitely chart it, but like being in charge,
Yeah, well,
of
I won't
looking
make
for,
you go that far.
yeah, of looking in my wife's stool for signs of things. I'm
Yeah.
like, ah,
Well,
talk
but
about
it's
hard
also
things.
important. I will say it's important for men to be comfortable with the language of cervical mucus.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I was, yes,
Basal
for
body
sure.
temperature. These keywords should mean something to men.
Yes. Cervical mucus is. I'm glad that she identifies it, but I'd be happy to chart it. That's a good. That's a good idea. So I want to recap what you shared, because I think it's really really good. The first is, I don't think you said this explicitly, but this is what I received, at least, that context really matters. A lot of times men and women engage in this dialogue around a problem. Like my experience of this conversation taking place on the therapeutic side is the female cycle becomes a burden and a pain point for the woman, and therefore for the family, and for the husband as well. And that could be like significant mood changes, and just a challenge to be kind in those periods. It could be just physical availability because the pain is so significant. It could just be volatility, like 1 minute one way, another minute the next. And it's like once it becomes a significant burden for one or more people, that's the context for the conversation, like one of the first conversations, which is really, really hard, especially for the woman, because in these circumstances, it's always hardest on her. Like it is always hardest on her. It doesn't mean that it invalidates the difficulty for other people, but it can feel invalidating in my experience for the woman when someone is like, hey, here's how your cycle is a burden on me, or here's how your cycle is negatively impacting our family context. For that to be the first conversation is actually really, like, you don't want that. If you have to have that conversation, if you have to enter into it, and we could talk about how you enter it with curiosity and compassion and things like that. There are tools. There are tools to do that from a communication standpoint that make the best of the situation. It doesn't mean you avoid conflict, but it makes the best of it. But what I'm hearing you say is, like, don't let that be the first time you have a dialogue. Let there be, in a much calmer, harmonious situation, let there be a mutual education around the objective science that takes place in every woman's body, and then the subjective reality of that objective biology. And having a good, solid understanding of that and mutual understanding of that, and which gives the husband the opportunity to be like, I love you in all stages of the month and in all moments of the month. Like, I love you. So that if for some reason the conversation ever had to swing to, are we sure that this is normal, that you just have to plod through this? Or maybe possibly, is it conceivable that there's a better way for you to live? That conversation is much better served if there's a foundation that's rooted in harmony. So that was one. The next one was like, if you have a foundation rooted in harmony, it's because you create a common language and understanding with one another, that you can say cervical mucus. You could talk about it. That's disarming. It's not like you're going through a mood swing. It's your progesterone levels are really high right now, or really low. I don't know the science. And you can, I don't have that common language yet. It's part of my homework after this, but like, you go and you have a common language that's not necessarily like, you're this and I'm receiving it this way, but like, hey, this is sort of what's happening, and we have a way of talking about it. And then the last one is like, in all contexts together, trying to enter into this with a state of curiosity rather than a state of defensiveness or fear or insecurity, but really curiosity, which you're allowed to have the freedom to be curious because you have this loving context to which the dialogue is based around. So how did I do in sort of like understanding and translating what
that was a fantastic summary, and I love that word harmony. That is a language of harmony between the objective science and the subjective reality, because that where harmony is created, disintegration and isolation doesn't stand. And I think that's so important to create this conversation and harmonious communication between spouses, so that a woman never feels isolated in this experience, or to the degree that we can prevent that. So often I hear from women that isolation is a challenge in these experiences, and if you wonder if she's if she's struggling to love her spouse or husband during a certain time of the month, you can almost guarantee that she's beating herself up about it more than you realize. And so, not only is it the physical manifestation, the emotional roller coaster, but then it's, as I talked about, kind of those that self blame or the language internal dialogue and language that can result. And so the more that these channels of communication can be opened between the spouses to understand and to affirm her goodness and the love that you have for her, even during these times where she may be struggling to love, to communicate, and vice versa. The more that you can prevent a sense of isolation in her experience, leading to divide in the marriage, and then also isolation in the medical side too, and where she may feel alone and doctors don't know what to do. I don't have answers there. This is causing division with my husband. Like, if we can start fundamentally to eliminate that division in the home, division between spouses, then that can also carry over into seeking good care as well. That she knows that she has your support, that this isn't just something that she has to pursue on her own, to fix her hormones, fix her fertility, but it's a journey you can embark on together.
Yeah, well, there's so many important implications for this as well. And like, if we had all day, we would probably now spend like an hour talking about the implications of this on the sex life of a couple. Because that's so often where isolation is experienced from my perspective, from like the clinical side of things. It's like, well, determining when we have sex and when we don't have sex is a point of tension and challenge in our marriage. Uh, and it's really kind of in the female's hands, because if we're, natural family planning and we're in a certain context, and it's God is calling us to abstain in this particular season for this particular reason, it's really a lot of pressure on her. And there could be a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty revolving around that conversation, which means, again, you don't want to have the first time you're really having a conversation about hormones and about your spouse's cycle. I guess one of the biggest takeaways I'm getting from you is like, you don't want to be having it in that high stress context, because she's going to take on so much. She's going to take on so much responsibility and put so much pressure on herself. It creates a higher degree of anxiety, which doesn't do well for the cycle anyway.
And if I could just add one thing, I'm a big advocate of women coming to understand their fertility at a young age. That as one of the first things we talked about is education at all stages, but education starting for adolescent girls, because I think there's many times women are just learning about their bodies during this window of preparing for marriage. If you're coming to understand your fertility in the context of natural family planning, there can be a lot of stressors around it. It suddenly becomes this very high stakes topic, this high stakes area between you and your spouse. And so, for any of the single women listening, it's not something to wait to learn until you are preparing for marriage, because this is a language of your body. It's for your health. Ovulation, as the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists have identified, ovulation is a fifth vital sign of health. So, among blood pressure, oxygen levels, ovulation is a key sign of health. So it's more than just for the sake of your fertility, combined fertility in the context of marriage, but really something to learn early, and that can benefit you, when down the road these conversations do take place in engagement in marriage, because then it isn't that pressure. Like, I have to learn this and figure it out. Oh no, there may be hormonal imbalances. Is this impacting our ability to conceive? What's going on? So being able to, educate and then address any underlying issues early can also be really beneficial and support harmony down the line.
And it's also really great work to do prior to, it's really great inner work to do prior to getting into a relationship in which you're discerning marriage,
Mm-hmm.
where you can actually have self love and you can actually have self appreciation. And, and it's like God is a fan of self love, right? Like, and not self love for the purpose of self love, but self love for the purpose of self gift.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus talked about like, okay, the order of love is love God and then love neighbor as self. Well, that creates a scenario for us where it's like, in light of loving God and being loved by God, we're actually free to love ourselves. And we're free to love ourselves the way that God loves us, not in the sense of like a grand defensiveness or insecurity of like, I can't be anything but perfect. And I don't want to hear anybody who would ever tell me anything otherwise than I'm perfect. Right? But like genuine in the light of God, through God's love for you, you can develop a love and appreciation of self. And it's out of that place of a secure base with God and appreciation of the self that you can actually know what it means to love another person and to give yourself as a free gift to another person. And I think that, you know, we could talk about this, you know, like biologically and psychologically, which we've mostly been doing, but let's actually integrate the conversation and bring Jesus into it and the spirituality side of things into it too, because this aspect of being free to give and receive love is essential to becoming who God made you to be. And this factor of, am I lovable, that emerges from a women's cycle seems to be such an important mechanism for believing that God created all parts of you, and God created you and looked at you and looked at all parts of you and said, you are good. Being able to look in the mirror and being like, that is true, that frees you up to then be a self gift for other people. And I think that's fundamental. I think it's fundamental to the human person, and it creates a great opportunity in this early education that you're talking about, that love is a key component to that education. It's not education for education's sake, but it's education for becoming a someone who is capable of giving and receiving love at a higher capacity than you are beforehand, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to also talk about this. There was another thing that I wrote down as you were talking about this, which is Jesus uses a lot of metaphors of light and dark. And he'll say things like things that are in the dark will be brought into the light, or that Jesus is the light of the world. And when you, like, from a psychological perspective, when someone keeps something in the dark, it has a tendency to, like, something negative in the dark, it has a tendency to go from like a lizard to, over time, a dragon in your life. Like something small turns into something really, really big. And so as a husband, that's what I feel about like the biological hormonal space of a woman's body. It's somewhere over here in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever it comes out, it ends up being this really big deal. It's like, oh, I don't know that I can have a baby, or like, it's creating so much friction in our house, or I can't get out of bed, right? And it's just like in the dark over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, as I was listening to you, I was like, you just want to, not to minimize everything you're saying, but like so much of your mission to me as I'm listening to is like, you would just want to bring it into the light.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's not minimizing. That's summarizing it well. Just bring it to the light. This is a beautiful, area for women to understand. It's at the core of who we are. It's fundamental to receiving God's love, to knowing that we are loved in the fullness of who we are and how we've been created, that our body matters, and through these bodies we are called to make a gift of self. But first we must allow God's love and his light to shine in all of these places. And this is a place, of light, for his love for us, and then for the people in our lives too. And if it's being kept in the dark, or there's that sense that this area is in the dark for both spouses, it doesn't have to be that way. And I just, if I can just affirm it, it does not have to be this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, one of the most practical questions I thought of prior to the conversation, some of these questions that have just naturally occurred due to the flow of conversation, right? But
Mm-hmm.
one of them that I premeditated is like, what are some things that would trigger the, hey, I should go talk to somebody about what's happening in my cycle? Like, when should someone be like, this isn't normal. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't something I should just slog through.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth it now for me. Like, I get that it's worth it on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone doesn't actively just seek education in this because it's good for everyone,
Sure.
if someone is looking for a reason, if they're sitting there right now being like, man, I don't know. I wonder if what I go through every month is normal or not. I wonder if I should engage with someone. Like, what are some signs or some indications or a barometer
Of course.
for somebody to step in like that?
Of course. Well, typical symptoms, unfortunately, because 1 in about 10 women have both endometriosis, as well as 1 in 10 women suffer from PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome. Symptoms related to those conditions are very common. So with endometriosis, we see very painful cycles, pain around the period. And just to give some context, that's where actually uterine tissue is growing outside of the uterus. And so that can cause fertility troubles, but just overall, it's a whole body condition that can cause a lot of problems. But very much, pain is seen, abnormal length of cycles. Women can experience heavy bleeding. With women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, there can be very long cycles, and that can, perpetuate symptoms of PMS at the end of the cycle. They have these long cycles. They're not sure when to expect their next period. So any, signs and symptoms that you may be telling yourself, I just need to deal with, whether that's, pain around the period, very irregular cycles, bleeding throughout the cycle, very long and heavy periods. These are all worth looking into, having tests run. That's part of what I do, is encourage my clients to ask for certain blood tests that doctors may not run without being asked. And it's very important for hormones to be tested on certain days of the cycle. And so tracking your cycle and having that information really helps provide a proper diagnosis, because day 21 of the cycle is not always 7 days after ovulation. And so knowing, properly testing progesterone levels, for instance, is really important to have that properly timed based on when a woman actually is ovulating. And so knowing that information can empower her to seek good medical care. And so just for starters, any irregular signs, symptoms, pain around the period, really, mood struggles for a week or longer leading up to the period. That's not normal to think that you just have to push through essentially depression for a week of the month, or you have such bad pain that you need to be in bed. Like, there are reasons that likely is taking place. And so any symptoms that are likely due to hormonal imbalance, and then even general symptoms that you may not be correlating to hormones. Hormones affect everything. And so if you're just generally very fatigued, struggling with energy, there could be some thyroid problems going on, or your adrenals may be overworked. And so just overall both signs and symptoms of the cycle, and then overall health symptoms as well, which I know is broad, but the whole point is listen to your body and then ask good questions to seek proper medical care.
And then from what I've been hearing, combining what I've been hearing from you and basic principles of good and healthy and kind communication, uh, the role of a husband in that context. If it's like, okay, hey, I'm seeing these things. I'm seeing that my wife has been complaining a fair amount about, or not even complaining, but just citing that she's a lot more tired than normal. And there've been different things that she's tried, more exercise, maybe a little bit better diet or more sleep at night, but just can't quite seem to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, like, to be able to go into that conversation and really, like, what is a time, not when she's in the midst of everything, but like, what is a time and place in which you can say something akin to, um, I don't want you to have to settle for this for the rest of
Mm-hmm.
your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that you were made for more. And I don't think that there's any issue with us, like, going and being more curious. Like, it's not about me feeling burdened. It's not about me negative anything. Like, it's about me loving you, wanting what's best for you, and wanting you to be able to have self knowledge in order to be the self gift that you want
Mm-hmm.
to be, and really trying to come at it from that perspective of curiosity and compassion, and it's about you,
Mm-hmm.
and not really like, hey, woman, stop being a burden on our family,
Absolutely. And it shows that you care, approaching it from a standpoint of, hey, honey, I've noticed that you've complained about how tired you are for multiple weeks now. It wasn't just a one-time thing because our kids weren't sleeping through the night. Do you think there could be something more going on? Is this something you'd like to take some time to explore? And how can you give her the space, the time to support her in that? Having time set aside where maybe she can take time away from the kids to do the research, go to an appointment, to seek out the type of specialists who may benefit her. It is maybe something beyond just going to the doctor, but especially for women who have had multiple pregnancies in a couple of years, they may be depleted of nutrients. There's so many of the nutrient stores in their body have gone to producing life. And so, working with a nutritionist, or, even taking that proactive approach to restore the body postpartum, with working with a pelvic floor therapist, or even, prior to pregnancy, working on strengthening that area. When we take this whole body approach, and the integrated approach of body and soul, it's really the awareness that there's you know support that can be offered at all stages. And yes, we can start with the symptoms of when something may not be right, but even when we are in good health, we all need mentors and advocates and support. And so I think just a good principle could be, what is that health check-in in marriage for both husband and wife, and how can you mutually support one another in that continued pursuit of who God has created you to be, and to love one another more fully. And that includes stewarding our bodies well. And so just allowing this to be a commonplace conversation around, how are we doing this? What could we be doing better? Are there certain resources that may be beneficial, for her health or for yours in this season of life? And so that, even goes beyond solving the problems or the pain points, but being proactive in that care as well. And again, that's just an area of passion for me. Women deserve support across the lifespan, and it's more than just taking care of nasty hormonal problems, but in caring for women in the beauty of pregnancy, the postpartum time, as their fertile years are coming to an end during the perimenopausal stage and menopause. How do we support women at every stage of life?
Why are you so passionate about this? I would love to just get a sense, as we get toward the end of our conversation here, like what brought you to all this?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. Well, like many, my own experience has driven my passion. You shared I studied biology and nutritional science, so certainly from an academic standpoint, there was interest, fascination in the human body and how we work at the cellular level, how God so magnificently has created us so intricately, starting with the molecules in our cells. But really for me, this journey started with my time in college. I was a college athlete. I ran cross country and track in college and was not getting a period at the time and was told birth control was the solution to that. And so really through that process of just integrating my studies in the classroom with my own health experience and starting to ask the question of, is this really what I need? Something wasn't adding up, because I knew from my endocrinology classes that our body's communication system between our brain and the ovaries, should be leading to a period. And if that wasn't taking place, something was off. And of course, that had to do with my athletic training. And the level of output taking place. But it was, years of healing, of seeking good doctors. We're having to go through more than a handful of doctors to really find that type of care to support my body, to restore my hormones. And through that process and, working with doctors, trying to find care, I realized, it wasn't just a restored cycle that I was seeking, but that idea of wholeness and, talking about the whole person and the way I saw myself. And so much of my identity was tied up in my high school and college years with my athletic performance as a collegiate athlete. There really was an untangling of that identity in sports performance, and kind of surrendering that to the Lord alongside healing in my physical body. And so whatever that is for women, oftentimes that physical experience is tied to how we view ourselves, how we receive God's love, or those blocks, those places of woundedness. And so, yeah, through my own healing journey, I also was fortunate to accompany many women. I was a missionary with Focus after college for 3 years and just got to walk with women. And though it was largely in the spiritual life, I can't tell you how often conversations about their health and their hormones came up, and women are just hungry for that support. And so I knew that, God was calling me to be part of the solution. And though I planned on going to medical school, the Lord has had other plans. I really have seen over the last handful of years that his call for me is in a space of being able to integrate the body and soul. And while physical healing is necessary, we need those who can honor the wholeness of who we are. And so he's called me to blend the two and being able to support the beauty of the hormones and the actual physiological needs there, channeling my love of science into hormonal support, but then also getting to really steward the soul of every woman, because every woman is beautiful and deserves to have her dignity upheld.
Amen. Amen. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. You can find Leanne at RoseFem.com, and it's definitely a great site. There's a lot of stuff on there. There's a newsletter. There's a bunch of free resources and more free resources that are coming for her and for the whole RoseFem community. But it's a lot of great work that you're doing. It's so needed, the work that you're doing. You've definitely inspired me. I'm like, all right, I've got work to do. And
well, Jack, you can turn to my newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter for regular updates, regular lessons on a woman's cycle and how to understand those different stages of her cycle, or go back into the archives to find, what's taking place during the follicular phase. What do I need to know for my wife? What do I need to know during
I just need to Google. I don't even know how to Google follicular. I don't even know what am I going to type in there? Spelling of that. Okay, I'm just amazed I even said it right. So, yeah, go to rosefem.com. Is there any social media that you're particularly active on, Leanne?
Soon to be launching. I have to say I've been slow to catch on to social media. Don't personally use it, but yes, you can in the next coming weeks look for the RoseFem on Instagram and hopefully TikTok to catch younger women. But you can also reach out to me directly at Leanne@rosefem.com. Send me an email. If you are a woman looking for hormonal support or seeking to simply understand the rhythms of your body in order to live in harmony with God's design, I'd love to accompany you, and I'm here to accompany women at every stage of their reproductive journey and really to restore the heart of womanhood. So I'd love to support women through my coaching programs, but also just to provide information and educational materials through my newsletter, and then I'll soon be having a 7-day free course launching as well. So stay tuned through the newsletter for that.
I will be subscribing shortly. And guys, those who are listening, the men who are on this and through this podcast, like it's part of good stewardship as men to create a context in which we can dialogue about this, where it's not only is it safe, but it's a context not of conflict, but it can be a context of love. All this stuff is just an opportunity to get better at giving and receiving love. It's an opportunity for growth and intimacy between you and like the women who matter in your life and in your world. And for you as particular, as a husband, as a father, to be able to express comfort and strength and not queasiness and whatever around just the reality and dignity of the biology of a woman is critical. Like creating a home in which these things can be honored and have a particular space to be discussed and for people to be loved, not like this is just something you hide from people and you keep in a corner in the room and you never ever talk about it unless you absolutely have to. Like that's a culture setting thing. And we can definitely get better at that.
Well, thank you, Jack, for being a voice for men and for advocating for their role in this.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, folks. God bless you. We post twice a week. You can like, subscribe, do whatever it is you need to do on the podcast. Always thank you to our friends at FEO for making this podcast possible. Until next time, remember, you were made to do hard things. God bless you all.